Hello, those who've joined so far. Welcome. We'll give it a couple minutes for people to join in. Hello, Robert, KJ. Hello, John and Audrey. CC, Corsair. Type in the chat so I know you're there. Just like our morning monastery experiences where everybody says good morning to each other. It's so nice. I like to see that community. Amy, welcome. Christine. My evening is going okay. It's been a busy day here. And me doing double duty with the Oposita. 5 o'clock, we had a session on our Discord. Hello, Millionaire, Sathira. You don't have to, Corsair. If you want to, that's fine. You know, if you have a personal email, like there's a Bhikkhu Jayasara YouTube channel, but only because it just decided to automatically take my Google email and just say, okay, guess what? You have a channel. You have an account, which is just silly, but it does that. All right. All right. I think we have enough people. We can get started. We'll get started with the chanting. And I think today we are going to do an Abhayagiri chant. I don't think Bante Pumuto is with us. So, that's right. So, page 268. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Handamayang anicca nussati patang namase. Sabbe sankara anicca, sabbe sankara dukkha, sabbe dhamma anatta, aduvang jivatang duvang maranang, avassang maya maritabang marana pariyosanang, me jivatang me aniyatang maranang me aniyatang, vatayang gayo achirang epeta vinyano chuddo adesse sati pataving kalingarang iva nirattang anicchavatta sankara upada vayadamino upajitva nirujjanti tesang vupasumo sukho. This is a very, very cool reflection. This is one of those things where I would suggest that you can use this as a daily reflection, along with 5 subjects of contemplation and maybe the burden and also it's hard, right? I should put together a grouping of these little small suttas that are perfect for these, for daily reflection. But anyway, so English. All conditioned things are impermanent. All conditioned things are dukkha. Everything is void of self. Life is not for sure. Death is for sure. Or otherwise, Bhante Silananda was the first one who introduced me to this phrase. Life is uncertain. Death is certain. It is inevitable that I'll die. Death is the culmination of my life. My life is uncertain. My death is certain. There you go. Indeed, this body will soon be void of consciousness and cast away. It will lie on the ground just like a rotten log, completely void of use. Truly conditioned things cannot last. Their nature is to rise and fall. Having arisen, things must cease. Their stillness is true happiness. All right, friends. Welcome to Dhammapalooza. Let's see, we have Owl with us. Thank you, Owl, for saying who you are, or else I would have thought you were a brand new person. So very good. All right, let's see here. Actually, I promised Robert that I would make a video / audio of how to do poly pronunciations. So I should, I probably won't end up doing it this week because this is my last week here on the farm and I'm wrapping up things and cleaning things and all that. But probably next week when I'm settled back in Jersey, maybe I'll do that. I'll have no work to do, no more chickens after this week. So I'll just be sitting around being lazy in Jersey. So that'll be, I can replace my chicken work with lots of good Dhamma work. How about that? All right. So friends, welcome to Dhammapalooza. Another Monday night, another Dhammapalooza. What we do here at Dhammapalooza is have a festival of Dhamma. 2 hours of good Dhamma. You can come and go as you wish. We do chanting, which we just did. We do guided meditation, maybe some readings, scripture readings, maybe some Q&A, maybe a Dhamma talk. Most of that depends on you guys, right? I don't think there's anybody brand new here. I'm only seeing about 11 people on the chat. So I think most everybody is not brand new. So you guys know the drill. So right now, if you guys have a topic you'd like me to discuss or the community to discuss, if you have a question that you'd like me to answer or for the community to discuss, feel free to put that in the chat. You guys know that the chat is not a interruption of me while I'm talking. You guys can type in the chat. You can have a discussion with each other in the chat. No problem. That's not an interruption to me. I keep an eye out on that. And so if anybody has any questions or topics that they'd like me to discuss, you can type that in the chat now. I also have a sutta and a topic just in case there's nothing. Can you guys hear me? Just checking because the chat seemed to stop and I don't know. I just want to make sure it's not an internet thing. All right. Okay, good. Now the chat's starting to move. Okay. Robert has an interesting question. I'm curious what you think of child ordination, Bhante. The Buddha didn't do it except for his son, yet it seems common in Asia. That's actually not 100% true. There are other child monastics in the Vinaya, I should say. There's Dabya Malayaputta, who was a 7-year-old arahant. Right? So there are multiple examples of young children who were samanera, which is a novice monastics. And hey, Sierra, welcome. So Well, the child monastic thing is a complicated topic. Um, for one thing, it's not my culture, right? I'm not a born Buddhist person. I'm not from a Buddhist culture. So, in that regard, I don't have much to say about it, right? It's not my culture. Um, on the other hand, I'll be honest with you, child monks, when they become adults, I've never really met a child monk, like somebody who was a monk when they were a child, that I was really, really impressed with. I mean, I'm talking about once I actually got to know them. I mean, Dhamma talks and things is one thing, but like when you actually get to see them and interact with them over long periods of time, it's like, yeah, not that impressed. You know, it's because when you become a monk, when you're at the age of like 10, 11, you become a master. You become a master at one thing: chanting, Pali, and Dhamma teaching. That's it. But you don't have any kind of real life experience and life skills that can translate to teaching, and to sharing with people who will have questions about like Dhamma in their life. Right? So it's a double-edged sword in that regard, right? It depends on what you're like. I wouldn't go to somebody who's been a monk their whole life and like ask him a question about practicing in lay life. Right? They're not going to have really much experience with that. It's just not going to happen. And you see it at Bhavana, like in terms of like learning Dhamma, Bhante G is like one of the top teachers in the world for learning Dhamma. There's no doubt about that. But you'd see like in the evaluations, like people would say like Bhante J is like Bhante J is relatable. He kind of understands when we have questions about life and stuff like that. So in that aspect, because I ordained later in life, and I practiced almost a decade as a Buddhist and as a layman, I do have that experience, right? So it's pros and cons, but when you become my experience with child, like again, not child, like adults, like people who were child monks, they get it pretty rough. I mean, I was a child protective service worker, so I mean, they get pretty abused as kids. A lot of those monks don't treat the young novices too well. But once they become monks, like once they become like fully ordained monks, they become kings. Like in Buddhist countries like Sri Lanka, you do not question monks, and you just do whatever they say. So if you have 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years of you say jump and everybody else just says how high, that doesn't really work well when you're engaging with people. Like when you have to run a monastery or that kind of stuff. Doesn't really work that well. So I don't really have much good to say, to be honest with you, in terms of my experience with people who were they're specialists, right? Like I said, they're specialists. They know Pali, Dhamma, and teaching, and that's it. They're not trained like how to raise other monks, how to organize. They're not trained in anything else but that. So now in places like Thailand, child ordination is like kind of like a fun thing. It's not really like a permanent thing. It's like, oh, my son is so cute in his little robes, right? And then they disrobe, right? It's not like a permanent thing. In Sri Lanka, it's like, yeah, if you decide at 11 years old you want to become a monk, you're going to be a monk, right? You're not going to just decide, okay, I'm not going to be a monk anymore, kind of a thing, right? And also, it's also kind of a thing where like children who are orphans and who have nowhere to go, just like, in many cultures, even in Christianity, in the old, in the Middle Ages with monastics, like orphans would become monks, like they would go to the monasteries. So you see that, like a lot of like children who are unwanted, who are orphaned, whatever, they are taken in and they are helped and raised by the monks. All right. Well, see, Robert, this is also what I said. Robert says, I can see there's a child, but then there's going to be an exception, probably mature. What I've noticed about, see, like in Thailand, it's okay if you disrobe. In Sri Lanka, it's not really a good thing if you disrobe. It's kind of considered like, so what you have is like, you have a lot of these kind of monks who are like, they became monks when they were kids, but they're in their 30s and their 40s, and you can tell that they're just not into it. Like if they really wanted to, they'd probably disrobe, but it's not something that, it maybe brings shame and all this kind of stuff, and they don't know anything else because they've been monks since they were kids, and so they're just going to hang out and watch TV and be praised and honored for the rest of their lives. I mean, it's like, so like I can empathize with that if they feel trapped in that. That's why I don't think that when it comes to monasticism, I think it should be like in the early text, like in the Vinaya. You want to be a monk? Okay, you become a monk. It takes a half hour. You want to disrobe? Okay, it takes 5 lines of Pali. That's it. And you hand in your robes, right? It should be that easy because nobody should feel like they have to be stuck. It's not a good thing. Let's see. Do I see any other questions? Okay, so the child ordination question is done. John says, is it unskillful to play video games where one takes virtual lives? Oh, John, you're you're right up my alley. I still contemplate and evaluate and think about this stuff to this day because, I was a big gamer, but I was also a big role-playing gamer. Like I loved the amount of virtual worlds that I've explored, either in games or books, or I just have always loved escaping to other worlds. I even literally wrote a whole a fantasy series. Like not the whole book. I had like 400 pages of notes on the world and the characters and one of my kind of side things was like I kind of wanted to be a fantasy writer. I loved that stuff. It was fun. So there's a lot of different reasons why people want to kind of escape into a virtual world, like escape into a world that's not theirs. Like this is what people do. Like people give, you have a regular job where you get home, you get online with your buddies, and then all of a sudden you're jumping out of planes behind enemy lines, right? Taking out the bad guys. Or you're, with your buddies online, you're leading a force against the evil orcs or whatever, right? Like, it's like, you can't do that in real life. Real life is boring. Like, this is one of the things that This is one of the things that I think about, like how as the world has become more materialist and modern, we've lost so much. Like to our ancestors, the world was alive with all kinds of mythology and stuff like that. And also the world could kill you. Like, the world was a very interesting, dangerous place. To us, it's kind of like, yeah, I go to my job 9 to 5. And so like this kind of normalcy that we've developed because there's so much safety and consistency in this kind of modern world, I think a part of us strives for that different life, that different, something that's more dangerous, right? That's more interesting, right? So we want to escape into that world, right? Be the special forces guy, be the wizard, right? How many times have I been the wizard? Hundreds, easy, right? So what I would say is, if you're living more of your life in the virtual world than the real world, it's not good, right? If it's harming your career and your family and all that stuff, it's not good, right? If it's something you do for an hour or whatever, like, most people spend 4 hours a night in front of the TV, right? For me, I never watch TV. I play games. Right. So my 3-4 hours, the amount of time people watch TV, I played games. Right. Basically the same thing. It's basically an escape. Right. That's what it is. It's an escape. Right. And it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a bad thing if taken to excess. Right. If you're trying to if you want to be a monk and you're trying to become awakened, eventually, yes, it's a bad thing. You shouldn't want to do that, because why? You're abandoning mindfulness. You're abandoning what's happening now in your mind and body, and your mind is going away. Same thing when you watch a movie screen. When you go to the movies, your mind just gets right into the screen. Right. Maybe about 4 or 5 months before I left for the monastery, I had an interesting experience because I loved movies. I loved going to the movies. And I forgot what movie it was. It was a decent movie. It wasn't a bad movie, but I was wrapped up in the screen, and all of a sudden I came back and I was totally mindful. And I was like, oh. And I'm seeing the dark, I'm seeing the screen, people around me. They're like, this is a different experience. Right? Like my mind came back from the screen, my mindfulness arose, and I was observing the experience from a mindful, straight up, this is what's happening in my mind and body, this is where I am, etc. And it was like, oh wait, that's fake in a way. Like that's not really what's happening now. It's just something that your mind escapes to, right? And so, that's I guess what I have to say about that. Even as a kid, that's what I did. Like, even before I had video games, like I loved to like escape into, like, my mind would go daydream somewhere else. Right? I'd be like in church and I'd be bored out of my mind. And I'd imagine, like, okay, what if a bunch of terrorists came in? How would I sneak around and take them out and things like that? Like I had all these kind of like daydreams of like, these kind of things that I would do. So some of us are more inclined to that than others. But, I would say it becomes grossly unskillful if it's actually harming your life, right? It's more subtly unskillful if you're trying to like get jhanas and really go for awakening. Then it becomes unskillful subtly. All right. Owl is saying, I feel growing up as a monk would be. Okay, never mind. That was in the. I thought I thought Owl had a question here. Oh, chat just jumped on me. Let me see here. Buddhist Boy Scouts. I don't know about that. They do have Boy Scouts in Sri Lanka, though. I met a Sri Lankan gentleman and his kids once, and we shared a fire at Bhavana in the snow in about 20 degrees, and we were all out by the fire. It was pretty nice. And he had been in the Boy Scouts in Sri Lanka when he was younger. I was saying I'm in a situation. I was rather thinking, would it be unwise to become a monk when I turn 20 if things don't improve? Owl, one thing I will say is if you're trying to escape something and to become a monk, most likely it's not going to work out for you. I mean, and most likely if people kind of see that, they're not going to, you know, it's very common for young people, maybe like right out of college or whatever, to kind of think, oh, you know, the world is this and that, and maybe I'll become a monk, right? Most of the time it doesn't work out. And most of the time the place kind of looks and says, this person's really not, their heart's not really in the right place about this, right? So, I mean, it's something that you can contemplate and think about, you know, maybe it is something that you really do want to do and you really will end up doing. Who knows? But you're young, so it takes time. I mean, when you turn 20, I became a monk when I was 36, 37, right? So there's time. So I wouldn't rush into it, especially if you're in that kind of like post-school period. That's a period of uncertainty, right? You don't know where you're going to go, what's going to happen. You know, lots of fears, etc., like that. Oh, Shab, welcome. Osmanthus. Yes, now that's a name I remember. It's been a little while. Good to see you. Oh, John, you're talking about killing and stuff like that. I remain unconvinced that, like, you know, shooting and doing stuff in video games is like really, you know, like impacts you in life. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've virtually killed probably thousands upon thousands of all kinds of beings, right? I don't know. So I now I understand what you mean by almost unskillful in that regard. That's a tough one. I can see that, you know, answers and debates on both sides of that. I mean, I've killed thousands of virtual human beings, but in my life, I don't think I've killed anything larger than an ant on purpose. Like, even as a kid, I was one of those, like, you know, I don't want to kill the bugs. You know, why you got to kill the bugs? Like, that's just. But boy, I've gunned down lots of people. Even in Grand Theft Auto, I played all the old Grand Theft Autos. Right? I mean, I did all that stuff. That was, you know what it can be? It's interesting. It can be a way to understand your dark side, right? Like, most people don't think that they have a dark side, or that they, like, so like most people don't believe that if they were in Nazi Germany, that they wouldn't be a concentration camp guard. They're fooling themselves, right? Everybody thinks they're going to be the one who does their, who in whatever the situation is, like, I was the one who did. No, 90% of the people did X. You most likely you would be with 90% of the people, right? So part of doing a lot of that stuff was exploring, for me, exploring the real dark capabilities that I have as a person, right? Every time I played a Star Wars game and I could choose, I was a Sith. Every time I played a World War II game and I could choose, I chose the Nazis, right? I always chose the bad guys, except for role-playing games. I was always a good guy in role-playing games. But like in those games, and why? It was because I was exploring that. I was exploring that dark side, right? We all have that dark side. Don't fool yourself in thinking that you don't. We all do, right? So I think that that kind of stuff can actually act as an exploration of that. It's very interesting. I haven't really thought about these things in a while. It's good to pick them up. Robert says, I think people are drawn into sci-fi fantasy because part of us needs that to feel alive. I've always felt, I can tell you that I was sincerely disappointed when I realized there's really no magic in the world. Like, I always wish that I could, conjure up a fireball and things like that. The world is just not... The modern world is just not that interesting. Right? So it's like there's a part of us we're very ancient creatures, right? We evolved in a world that's very different than today, right? And so we kind of we desire that hero's journey, right? To go out into the world and to face the dangers and to, bring back wisdom and things like that. That's just part of us. Osmanthus says, I was thinking about what you said that past Saturday, Bante. Do you think the reason why Second Life is more immersive is because of the 3D sprites and environment which mimics reality more? Yes. Yeah, so for those of you who weren't on my Saturday session on Second Life, there's an interesting character, this guy from Malaysia, who's been asking me questions about kind of like the validity of virtual spaces with the Dhamma, right? And so what I was talking about was how, if you've never been on Second Life, you might not understand what I'm talking about. But what I mentioned was, like, I feel more when you come to the deer park in Second Life, right, in Buddhist Center, and you sit down on the, I mean, obviously it's not you, it's a little character on the screen, right? But having your character sit there and listen to somebody talk, or to be the one sitting there and talking to other people, to me, is much more connecting and immersive and more closely related to how it actually is to be in front of people sharing Dhamma than what I'm doing right here. I see a picture of myself and I see text on the screen, right? It's not so immersive, right? Or even on the Discord. Even if there's a bunch of us, like 5 or 6 people, like today on our post of the session, we have 5 or 6 people in video. Still not the same. But everybody, you have your little avatar in a virtual space and you sit down and stuff. To me, that feels more like actually being in a place with people and sitting down than text and video does. Because it's a flat, video is flat. Text is flat, right? So yeah, so for me, the 3D space is more connecting than a flat screen, for sure. A flat video. Robert says, then the screen moved. Then the chat jumped. All right. This is an interesting set of topics today. So we're talking about the, all kinds of fantasy and entertainment and the mind and escape, and it's a good topic. Let me see here. Make sure I get my. Okay. Robert says, I find myself pulled into Star Trek, Wars, Firefly, other sci-fi fantasy shows. What? No Warhammer 40K? Yeah, no. Well, I mean, I get it. I never was as much a sci-fi fan as a fantasy fan, but I get it. Firefly was good. All right. Whoa. Video games is fine, Adriana says, but why do we have to come after movies? Oh, what? You don't want me to come after movies? Movies? What? Hundreds of years ago, from thousands and thousands of years, actually, fire's 1,000,000 years. From 1,000,000 years ago to 100 years ago, the way you were entertained, learned, story, whatever, was stories around a campfire. Right? Stories around a campfire. Fire is older than Homo sapien. Right? Stories around a campfire is as old as we are as a species. Right? So what came next? Radio, TV, movies, video games. It's just the same. It's just a more advanced level of the same thing. It's storytelling. Just like when you were young, if you were lucky enough to have parents that would read to you and stuff, read stories to you before bed. Our ancestors told stories around a fire, right? Now we don't have to do that. We play video games and watch movies instead. It's basically the same thing. It's just not as cool. There's nothing like sitting around a fire telling stories. But anyway. Okay, let me see here. Amy says, I find this current modern world quite interesting and potentially just as dangerous, if not more so, than any other world. I don't know. It depends. Now, if you're outside of the first world, then maybe I agree. But the first world is, I mean, there's a lot of safety. I mean, the fact that you can flip a switch and turn a light on consistently, that's a lot of consistency that most human beings never had. So, Robert says, so is reading fiction worse than watching something since it's a complete mental fabrication? No, I don't know if I would really make a difference. I would think, in all honesty, reading is going to be better for your development than watching, right? Because imagination as you're reading, and developing your mental acuities and your vocal skills and all that stuff. So really reading and playing video games are active. Watching TV and movies is not active. Right? Like there's differences. Like watching TV and movies, you're just sitting there. I mean, maybe mentally it's a little bit active because you're kind of wrapped up and maybe you're thinking about what's happening, but there's no physical and mental engagement like there is with reading and watching video games, playing video games. All right. Josh has a question bringing us back to straight Dhamma. Oh, wait, never mind. There's some questions before that. Audrey has a question, but is the effect of your karma of killing virtual people the same if you do it in the real life? No, there's no karma for killing virtual people because there's no karma for a thought. There's no karma for mental, right? The karma comes from if it comes from your mind to your words and your deeds, right? You can think in your mind, I'm killing all these people. Now, is it unskillful? Yes. I mean, it's not really helpful, but it's not like bad karma. Because it's not really, if you're thinking about killing people a lot, like, I like killing people, I want to kill people, and you build that up, right? Like in the sutta, is it the two kinds of thoughts sutta? The Buddha says that which one ponders on often becomes the tendency of the mind. So yeah, if you do that over and over and over again, pondering that, thinking about that, engaging in that, then eventually that could lead to, very bad actions with your deeds. But I hesitate to equate, killing virtual characters with karma. That's a bit much. I wouldn't go that far. All right. Now, Josh, question. I have a question on the higher mind. I can meditate and feel some joy, but I'm having a hard time with my mindfulness and concentration being focused and continuous. It depends on what you mean by focused and continuous. Are you talking about like within a 20-minute period, or are you talking about all day? Right. There's a difference there. As we practice, we will be able to develop longer periods of time in being able to be in states of concentration and stuff, but eventually it will end. Right? In the beginning, it's only a short period of time, but then over time, it gets longer and longer and longer. But in the end, it will end, right? So I wouldn't be too down on yourself if you can't keep it going for a long period of time. The point is, the reason why, like when we follow our breath and we get distracted and we come back and we get distracted and we come back, it's building a muscle. Right? It's developing a habit. So for when you're in a period of time, however long you're able to keep your mindfulness and concentration focused is however long it gets focused, right? You're not worried about necessarily how long, because in many ways you don't have a choice in how long, right? Because it's conditioned. It has arisen due to causes, and it'll cease due to causes. What you have a choice in doing is coming back to the breath, coming back to your object of meditation, right? Coming back to mindfulness. Every time you lose it, coming back, lose it, coming back. And so your time will vary, right? You won't have a say in how long. So just try to do your best in bringing yourself back to mindfulness. When I do my guided meditations, I say, acknowledge your distraction, practice letting go, return to the breath, right? Acknowledge, let go, and return over and over and over again. Developing that habit, right? Building that mental muscle of coming back. And the more you're able to do that, and the longer you're able to stay in that concentrated mindfulness and mindful state, the closer you'll be able to get to deeper states of concentration and be able to see things more with insight and wisdom. All right. I'm having a hard time taking my meditation further. The breath will take you all the way to awakening, right? You just have to keep practicing. Now, I mean, sometimes you might hit plateaus, right? And maybe you need to shake things up a little bit, right? Maybe alternate the way you practice, something like that. But in general, the answer is more practice. The answer is don't quit practicing, don't stop, keep going, keep trying, keep doing those practices. Mindfulness of breathing, 4 foundations of mindfulness. If you're doing Anapanasati and Satipatthana, the answer is to keep doing it. Keep practicing it, right? Ups and downs, lefts and rights, it doesn't matter. Keep practicing. Keep going, right? Sometimes you hit plateaus. Sometimes those plateaus can be days, months, years even, right? But you keep practicing. You keep going. Even, get advice, whenever you talk to a monastic, if you're stuck, ask them, maybe their opinions, ask their question. Maybe you might get little tidbits of advice that can help you get over your hump, right? And maybe sometimes you just have to keep practicing, keep, working at it. And then one day insights come, your hump is over. You keep going until the next hump. Keep going until the next plateau. Robert says, I think I want to ordain for the same reason I find myself reading lots of fantasy, sci-fi, because I'm depressed, lonely, bored most of the time. Becoming a monk is not going to help that, man. Let me tell you. The practice will help that, right? But becoming a monk is not escaping that. Right. In many ways, you might even be, you could end up being more depressed, more lonely, and more bored. Right. So that's definitely, I would say that those are probably not the best reasons to become a monk. De- Definitely not. Oh, another jump. Okay, here we go. Whoa. Oh, hi, Elaine. This whole chat jumping thing is not conducive to me keeping up with it. All right. Thank goodness Bante did not choose a life of evil. Not in this life. I'm sure I've done lots of bad things in former lives. But in this life, it just worked out that way. Hey, it's interesting how karma works out, right? Because my dream for all of growing up was to be a jet fighter pilot. I mean, I protected my eyes for that. I learned, I practiced. I even when I was 16, I took flight lessons, right? I mean, that's what I wanted to do my whole childhood. I wanted to be a jet fighter pilot. I wanted to fly those jets, right? And interestingly enough, what killed that for me was stuff that I was born with. Allergies, asthma, also. So I was never going to be that anyway. And it's a good thing because then I think about, I probably would have ended up killing a lot of people. So I'm kind of glad I didn't. Right. So things kind of sometimes karma and stuff, things just work out in a way, right, that you don't expect. I wasn't expecting to be I didn't grow up thinking I'm going to be a Buddhist monk. I didn't even become a Buddhist thinking I was going to be a Buddhist monk. This is how it worked out. So, all right. Oh, John. I love John's quote. I'm much better looking in Second Life. Actually, so am I. I think my character. Oh boy. Bante could have been a Sith. Yeah. Well, I do kind of like the lightning, shooting the lightning out of your fingers. Whenever I was a wizard, I liked the lightning. That was my favorite element. All right. Osmanthus says, all right, I don't, okay. Video game reference I'm not familiar with. KJ says s'mores. Yeah. So, but a monastic s'more is dark chocolate and marshmallows. That's it. The rest is not allowable after 12. So, no graham crackers. All right. Another jump. All right, here we go. Sierra. Okay, Sierra. Um, my dad's girlfriend, neither a Buddhist, was suddenly put in a hospital, and there's a chance she might die soon, or sometime in the near future. Advice on how I can support my dad. It's hard to pull myself out of the Buddhist mind state because that's where I find peace during challenging times. But obviously, that won't help. So, well, that's actually perfect. Exactly what you just said there, right there. Support your father, right? Sometimes, maybe if he has to be in the hospital, Is there something in his house he needs to, is there animals that maybe need to be taken care of? Something in the house because he's in the hospital, so you can support, be a support that way. You can be a support since I don't know your relationship with his girlfriend, but if you have a good relationship with her, you can visit her and things like that. You can also tell your dad, I'm here if you need to talk, right? I'm here if you need to let out stuff, right? Don't try to force it. Don't try to be like, you need to let it all out and you need to. No. People need to go through what they go through. They need to handle it in their own way, in their own time, right? Your job is best to just make sure that they know that you're available for them. And then when they actually need you, be available for them, right? When they actually say, I need to talk, just so that you can be an ear, right? You can be an active listening, right? To listen, or a shoulder to cry on or whatever, right? So making sure that they know that you're willing to be of whatever support they need, and then following through with what you said. Those are the most important things. You don't need to talk about philosophy and, different views on death and all that. I mean, if they want to talk about that stuff, sometimes people need to work through that, right? That's a different story. But you don't need to bring that in. It's just, I'm here for you. Whatever you need, I'll help support you as best I can. And that's it. Elaine, what kind of question? I don't know. I don't know that there's an answer to that, Elaine. What do you think the Buddha would say about mandatory COVID vaccination? The best I could do is, the Buddha never makes anything mandatory, never forces anybody to do anything, right? There's no force in the Buddha's teachings. There's no force. I can't think of one situation where the Buddha forces anybody to do anything. I can't. Because force is just not a way to skillfully do something. It's just not. Right? You can't force. If you force somebody, right, they're not going to really want to accept that. They're not going to really, it's not really their thing, right? So the Buddha never, this is why in Buddhism, like for monks, I literally have a rule that says I cannot just go and teach somebody Dhamma. I can't just go knock on somebody's door and say, hey, have you heard the good news of our Lord and Savior Buddha? No, it doesn't work. If I just start talking Dhamma to somebody, it's a breach of a monastic rule, right? So even like you might even think like when the Buddha says, go forth for the good of the welfare of the many folk, right? To those first 60 monks. He's not telling them to go forth and preach and try to get converts, right? That's not what they did. People saw that they were wise and dignified and how they acted, and they had questions, right? That is how that's why when people get like really excited in the beginning when they first become Buddhists, they want to preach it to the world and they want to have their friends be Buddhists and this stuff. If you've gone through that, you realize, yeah, that wasn't the good way to do it. That was not the best way to go about things. But because you were so excited and because it was so impactful to your life, you wanted to share it. But you realize that the best way to influence anybody is to live the way you want to influence people, to be the change you want to see in the world, right? Not to force people. Religion throughout history that, either convert or you die. Most people probably don't want to die. There might be some real strong people with hold on to ideals and they're like, okay, I'm ready to go. See ya. But most people will be like, nah, I'm going to convert. How many of those people you converted you really think are going to practice? Nah, they're not really, because it's not their thing. But they just did it to save their life. It's not really a good thing. Force in the world is not really a good thing. Sometimes that force needs to be done. Governments need to have force of certain things. Even the Buddha recognized that kingdoms need armies, right? The Buddha didn't say it's bad for kingdoms to have armies. No, he says he recognizes just, kingdoms have armies for defense, right? So you just understand, well, sometimes there's force, but there should be limited force, right? So I guess it's really a question of force. And what would the Buddha say about force? And that's about all I can say about what the Buddha would, force is not skillful. It's not conducive to any kind of real beneficial change. But Sierra, just, the Buddhist mindset, again, it's one of those things where, somebody, this is good for everybody, somebody's dying or whatever, and say, oh, well, everything is impermanent. that doesn't work, especially for non-Buddhists, right? So you just have to, just very basic, well, I guess I say common sense, but common sense ain't so common these days. Telling somebody that you're willing to be there for them and then following through. That's the most important thing. And Sierra, if you have any clarifications, anything you want me to clarify or say more about that, type it in the chat. All right. I don't know what you're saying. Oh, come on to, Elaine, but oh, Eli, welcome. Eli says, well, he did have Mahamoggallana remove a few corrupted monks. Technically, he didn't. Mahamoggallana did that on his own. Mahamoggallana was just wondering why the Buddha wasn't starting with the Patimokkha. He's like, what's going on? And then he saw oh, I see, there's Parajika monks in here. And then he did it. Well, yeah. But then again, those monks became monks of their own accord. So it's not really force. I mean, it's kind of like you signed up for it. It's like you can't sign up to join the army and then feel like, oh, you're forcing me to do this. You signed up for it, So those monks signed up to become monks, and that's part of the deal, right? Oh, jumping chat again. All right. Oh yeah. Where did it go here? Oh, okay. Robert. The Inquisition. Let's begin. All right. Has always seemed insane to me for the reason if you're actually interested in gaining. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's part of human religion, human having a um having an ideology that you're willing to kill for and die for. That's part of humanity. It's not just Christians, not just Muslims, not just so many different, even Hindus. There's a history of that, like, hey, you're going to be a Hindu or else, or you're going to be a Brahmin, it's just, it's part of human culture. It's part of human nature, right? But so is also part of human nature is, yeah, okay, I want to live, but I ain't gonna really follow it. I'll just go through the motions. Sierra says common sense with death is hard. You never know what to say. But so you start to know what to say when you go through enough deaths. when you go to enough funerals and you see enough people say stupid things and you say stupid things, and then when you're like the family member at enough funerals and people come up to you and say stupid things, you start to kind of get wise to what's the best thing to do. Right? And so advice to anybody in regards to if somebody like a friend dies or a family member dies or whatever, a friend, you go to a funeral. Be very this is what you say to his loved ones at a funeral. My condolences, sorry for your loss. If you ever need anything, here's my number. Right? This is obviously if like if it's just like, your cousins, friends, whatever, then you just say my condolences, sorry for your loss. But if somebody, if you know the person and you really want to help them, you say, my number, call me anytime. And then if they call you, which they might not, or they might even not call you, if they do, it might not be till months later. Right? If you tell somebody basically I'm here for you, then be there for them. Right? That's 100%. Like if you don't feel like you're willing to do that, then don't say it. But if you are, then follow through. Right? And it's not, again, it's mostly about listening too. You don't even have to really say much. Right? Sometimes they'll just need, oftentimes they'll need somebody to just listen. If you start saying things and they're in a better place, or they say that it gets better with time, and don't say any of that stuff. Don't even just. It's better to be quiet. It's better to be quiet than say something stupid. It's just the way it is. Right? So, my condolences. Sorry for your loss. If you need anything, I'm here. Right? And then every once in a while, just give a call. Say, hey, how you doing? Just you don't even have to say just checking in. You don't even have to make it obvious. You can just say how you been, etc. And then that's it. Right? Every once in a while, especially so Sierra, if your dad's girlfriend does die, after the funeral and such like that, during the funeral, it's one thing. But what happens is when somebody loses somebody they love, and I know this from experience, most of you know this, right? The funeral and everything, there's lots of people around. You're busy. You're making funeral arrangements, what casket, such and such, and all these kind of things. You're making all these arrangements. So it's a busy hay, and you're kind of still in this. In the first weeks after somebody dies, you're still kind of in this like you don't really believe it phase. It doesn't seem real phase. There's lots of people around you. It's very heartwarming, etc. But then once the funeral is over, once everybody goes away, that's when it starts to hit you. That's when actually it's the worst time. Right? So I've always, if I was like with somebody like going through something hard, the time to really be impactful for that person is the time after everybody else has basically said, see you later. Right? Because after everybody has said, see you later, it doesn't even have to be when they've lost somebody. Maybe they've gone through a severe, like a mental illness or an injury or something. They were in the hospital a long time. Once everybody stops paying attention to them, that's when a lot of this stuff comes up. The hardcore processing starts to begin, right? So keeping up with them after all of that stuff ends, that's important. Robert, how did he know they were corrupted? Mahamogalana is the master of the psychic powers. He read their minds. He saw their minds. Of course he's Sariputta couldn't know because Sariputta didn't have any psychic powers. But Mahamogalana could see all that stuff. He could know. Maybe it's like predator vision. Like those like the bad monks were like the heat signatures. Boom. Oh, I see the bad monks. All right. So I think that we have a natural ebb in the chat here. I think now's the time to have our guided meditation. And then when we finish up the guided meditation, we'll come back. We'll have 10, 15 minutes to do. Maybe we'll do some of our verses readings from the Samyutta Nikaya, and then we'll call it a night. All right. Adriana, after all this whole year of Dhammapalooza, you're the one who's leaving during the guided meditation. I don't know. I'm not going to let you leave. I'm not going to let you live that one up. All right, Adriana. Have a good night. Okay, friends. Set up your body in whatever position that is comfortable for you for meditation. We'll spend some time going through our body, scanning. Start with our feet. Bring your awareness to your feet. And by bring awareness, this means come into contact with whatever sensation and feeling you experience with that part of your body. For example, the feeling of the feet touching the ground. We like to scan through the body so that we can do two things. First is so that we can slowly begin to bring our awareness from the external, the chat and whatever you're rooming that you're in and all that stuff, from the external world to the internal, your mind and body. And the second reason is to set your body up in a comfortable and stable position that allows you to sit for longer periods without undue pain. Bring your awareness up through your ankles. Your calves. Your knees. Bring your awareness up through your thighs. What is the feeling of the thighs pressing against the chair? Bring your awareness up through your hips and pelvic area. It is important to check the position of your hips and pelvis as they play an integral role in your posture. both for your lower body and for the stability of your spine and upper body. When you're done setting up your lower body, you can bring your awareness to your abdomen, chest. Check to see that your spine is not leaning or slouching, but resting comfortably in its neutral position. If your spine is stretched out, your upper body's trying to struggle to stay in a posture. Over the period of a meditation session, your muscles will strain and then you'll have some back pain. When you work on your posture and set yourself up in that stable and comfortable position, then all parts of your body are comfortable, not strained or bent or pushed. Check to see that your shoulders are hanging loosely, not scrunched up and tight. And bring your awareness down through your elbows and hands. Check to see that they're in a comfortable position that does not impact your posture, causing your body to lean or slouch. And finally, bring your awareness up to your head. Checking that your head is resting comfortably, not slouching or leaning, with your chin parallel to the floor. And then whenever you're done setting up your body in a stable and comfortable position, take 3 deep breaths, let the body go. Then let the breath go. From here on in, we do not want to manipulate or control the breath in any way. We simply want to try to abide with the breath, to watch as this body breathes in, watch as this body breathes out. This body has been breathing from the moment you were born and will continue to do so until the second you die. It doesn't need you to do its job. Your job is to simply abide with the breath, watch the body breathe in and breathe out. You may find most prominent the sensations of the breath, of the air coming in and out of the nostrils. You can place your awareness there. If not, that's okay. You may find most prominent the rise and fall of the chest. You can place your awareness there. Or you can simply abide with the basic awareness that this body is breathing in and breathing out. As you're following your breath, you may become distracted. Your mind may decide to wander off to the past or the future, the other side of the world or the galaxy. There may be external distractions like sounds. Whenever you have been distracted away from your breath, first, when you start to recognize you've been distracted, acknowledge that. Come back to full awareness that you are away from your breath and distracted. Then practice letting go of that distraction and return to the breath. Do your best to practice not getting agitated by the distraction and pushing it away, nor getting attached to it and liking it and thinking more about it. Try to do your best to let it be, not give it any energy. And then return to your breath. The breath is home. Your body is always breathing. It's always there. As long as you're alive. And you can always return to the breath to take a pause and stay in the present. Watching the breath come in and go out. Whenever you're distracted, acknowledge, let go, and return. Every once in a while, check in with the state of your mind. Is your mind becoming more calm and peaceful, tranquil, or not? If you notice that your mind is becoming more calm and tranquil, you may begin to recognize and see more subtle characteristics of the breath. You might be able to start seeing how the breath is changing. Sometimes the breath is long and deep, sometimes short and shallow. Try to be aware, pay attention to this changing. Investigate more subtle characteristics of the breath. Slowly start to open your eyes. Bring your awareness back to the external. What's going on in the room that you're in, all around you. The computer or the phone, the live stream, your Dhamma friends in the chat. Take a minute to observe your mind state. Compare it to how it was before you started your meditation. Can you notice anything that's changed? How has your mind changed in the period of 30 minutes of practice? Before and after. Make that a habit, right? As a kind of checking in, kind of summarizing the end of your practice. So who's still here with us as we go through our last 15 minutes? Adriana left, which is a first. So that means we have to rub it in when we see her. All in good fun, of course. So we have some Samyutta Nikaya verses still going through. All right. Got a question for you guys. Can you hear during the meditation and stuff, were you able to hear like other voices or anything on the audio or no? Oh, Little Lighthouse. Well, welcome. Yeah, it's okay by accident. It's good to meet you. Unfortunately, it is towards the end. So you guys were able to hear it. Okay. Well, I just wanted to double check that. Yep. Okay. I thought so. I have my mic set so that it only like usually covers one direction. But yeah, I assumed so. All right, good to know. So so Little Lighthouse, how did you come to us by accident? Did you know my channel before, or do you literally just find the channel? I'd actually be interested in knowing how you came to find us by accident. And while I wait for a response, we can read. So, Samyutta Nikaya verses 172, a chariot. What's the mark of a chariot? What's the mark of fire? What's the mark of a nation? What's the mark of a woman? A banner is the mark of a chariot. A smoke is the mark of a fire. A ruler is the nation's mark, and a husband is the mark of a woman. Last week, we saw the opposite, that a woman is the mark of a husband. So the mark here, this word is like a sign, a mark, a sign. Like, so it's kind of like talking about something that it's connected with. 73, wealth. Oh, you follow Bhante Varapanyo. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So that's how you came to us. Okay. Continuing on with the readings. Wealth. What's a person's best wealth? What brings happiness when practiced well? What's the sweetest taste of all? The one who they say has the best life. How do they live? Faith here is a person's best wealth. The teaching brings happiness when practiced well. Truth is the sweetest taste of all. The one who they say has the best life lives by wisdom. Rain. What's the best of things that rise? And what's the finest of things that fall? And what are the things that go forth? And who's the finest speaker? A seed's the best of things that rise. Rain's the finest thing that falls. Cattle of things that go forth. And a child is the finest speaker. Knowledge is the best of things that rise. Ignorance, the finest of things that falls. The Sangha of things that go forth. And the Buddha is the finest speaker. Java and Dhamma? Oh, you're talking about the what you call it, the coffee house ambiance vibe. All right. 75. Afraid. Why are so many people afraid when the path has been taught with so many dimensions? I ask you, Gautama, whose wisdom is vast, standing on what need one not fear the next world? When speech and mind are directed right, and you don't do anything bad with body, while dwelling at home with plenty of food and drink, faithful, gentle, charitable, and kind, standing on these four principles, standing on the teaching, one need not fear the next world. '76. Getting old. What gets old? What doesn't grow old? What's called a deviation? What's a roadblock for skillful qualities? And what is ending day and night? What's the stain of celibacy? And what's the waterless bath? How many holes are there in the world? Where one's wealth leaks out. We've come to ask the Buddha, how are we to understand this? The physical form of mortals gets old, but their name and clan don't. Lust is called a deviation, and greed obstructs skillful qualities. Youth is ending day and night. Women are the stain of celibacy, to which this generation clings. Austerity and celibacy are the waterless bath. There are 6 holes in the world, where one's wealth leaks out. Laziness and negligence, lack of initiative and lack of restraint, sleeplessness and sloth, or sleepiness and sloth. You should completely get rid of these holes. All right, Elaine. Have a good night. '77. Authority. What is authority in the world? What's the best of valuables? What in the world is a rusty sword? Who is a plague on the world? Who gets arrested when they take things away? And who is loved when they take things away? And who is approved by the astute when they come again and again? Power is authority in the world. A woman is the best of valuables. Anger in the world is a rusty sword. Abandon is a plague on the world. A bandit gets arrested when they take things away, and an ascetic is loved when they take things away. An ascetic is approved by the astute when they come again and again. "78. Desire. What should one who desires the good not give away? What should a mortal not reject? What should be let out when it's good, but not when it's bad? A man shouldn't give away himself. He shouldn't reject himself. Speech should be let out when it's good, but not when it's bad." "79. Provisions." And I think this will be the last one. How should provisions be tied up? What's the lair of wealth? What drags a person around? What in the world is hard to give up? What are many beings tied up with, like birds in a snare? Provisions should be tied up with faith. Glory is the lair of wealth. Desire drags a person around. Desire in the world is hard to give up. Many beings are tied up with desire, like birds in a snare. All right. I think that is a good place to stop. So let's do our sharing of merits, and then we'll call it a night. Dukkha patta chani dukkha, bhaya patta chani bhaya, soka patta chani soka, hontu sabbe pipaniyo, ettavata cha amehi sampadang punya sampadang, sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya, akasatta jabumata devanaga mahiddika punyang tang anumoditva charang rakantu sasanang. May the suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we've thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas, nagas, and yakas of mighty power, share in this dispensation of ours. Share in this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddhist dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, friends, that is the end of Dhammapalooza. Thank you for coming. Much appreciated. If you are around tomorrow morning, as we do Monday through Friday, we have morning monastery experience with the last week of Views of the Mountain as we do our chanting, precepts, and a little thought of the day, a little Dhamma talk. So you can join us at every morning, Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. Eastern, and which is in about 10 hours from now, somewhere around there. Or you can join us again next week for more Dhammapalooza. If you like what I do and you feel like it is beneficial, clicking the like buttons and doing all that stuff is helpful so that the channels can be seen more. And this goes for all Buddhist channels. If you're listening to other monks and different Buddhist channels, click that like button so that more people can see it. More people can be involved. More people, the YouTube algorithms and all that jazz can show more monks to people, which is a good thing. Okay, friends. Until next time, Sukhi Hotu, may you be happy. Practice well and be well. I wish you a very spiritually successful and peaceful week.